So thank you very much for the survey today. If I get a chance, I'm going to update and edit this video, but in a much shorter form with a focus on a single issue and anything that might be affecting it and some additional information. But here is the unedited version, and in the email there are all the recommendations and actions. I've used AI to do it, just makes it quicker and also more accurate. Less is dropped through, and I quickly read through it to check that it all makes sense. But I will double check before sending the final version. Note, I do the data loggers when I send off the final version. So thank you very much, and have a listen. Looking at the outside, I can see there's been a loft extension, and I think we're going to flat B. Let's have a look. Your neighbours, you've got this calcium sulfate, so it's blistering here, causing micro cracking. Probably not penetrating the whole way through, but it caused heat loss. So I'll just have a look. That looks fine. We've got crystallisation there as well. Let's have a look on the inside. How long have you guys been here?
5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Okay. And was there damp from the start?
I wouldn't say there was evidence of it when we viewed, but
Did it come up
There
on
was a
survey or-
dehumidifier that was here when we came round to look.
the surveyor said we'd had a survey done on another property that had come back really bad for damp.
Really bad, yeah.
The surveyor said in terms of this period of property, it was very good for the level. Like there was, it wasn't like damp free, but it was as good as he would expect from property of this type, and that it was, that it was okay basically.
Okay. Well, let's go and have a look at the damp then.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So,
Well, we did put some paint, because it was a special kind of paint over the top of it, didn't we?
I think it was, I can't remember now if it was damp paint or that stain paint.
Zinza.
It might have been Zinza.
Let's have a look outside. So, I was expecting to see a source of water on the outside causing a leak.
No, we've checked for that.
We did
So,
have...
during a rainstorm, does it?
No.
If it's particularly heavy, then it would sort of overflow the gutters, but other than
We
that...
had, but we had the
haven't noticed
guttering
it.
rerouted, didn't we,
Up on the very top
to
roof.
prevent that happening. So I haven't noticed that be a problem since.
I would normally expect to see a sort of green, well, I see darken colour, but that could be historic. Expect to see some green growth, but there's a small amount there, but nothing major. It's been damp proofed in the past. Do you see these dots? The base of the wall. That tells me that it's been damp proofed, and typically what happens is they inject chemicals and they replace the internal plaster with a sort of impermeable plaster that hides damp rather than deals with the root cause. But what I'm seeing is with brown staining is it comes from water passing through building material. So anyway, I'll have a better look at that.
Too close to the wall and it was trapping water.
No, because I mean, I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's very common to see that, and it doesn't normally end up with dampness. I mean, ideally you have a plinth at the base of the wall to stop water bouncing back up the wall. In London, most places have a plinth up to about sort of 300-400 mil.
What would a plinth be made out of?
So it's essentially it's a cement base render or mortar, and that would be ideal. But a lot of properties don't have it, and it doesn't mean that you have dampness. Quite often, so this would have originally been an outside doorway, and there would have been a subfloor vent, the base of that would have allowed airflow, but you haven't got that. Have you? Is it? I can't remember now. Was it suspended timber floor inside, or was it solid floor? I'll have a feel. I'll be able to tell. So this is suspended timber floor. I'm hearing it sounded sounds hollow.
Yeah.
And so you're getting calcium sulfate salts blistering through the paintwork there. That looks fine there. You can see some hygroscopic salts, but that's not going to cause that type of internal dampness. So the hygroscopic salts that you're seeing here is from moisture in the wall, and the key ingredient of plaster is calcium sulfate. The old name is gypsum, and it's a common name for modern day plasters, gypsum.
Okay.
If you look in DIY stores, that's what they call it. And what happens is that when it dissolves, it will then move to the evaporation surface, crystallise, and it forms these sort of blistering.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it on the front of your property.
Yeah.
You have that, and I thought that was going to be the
That
area.
is another area.
That is
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
When it's on the outside, what you get is what's called micro cracking, which is where you've got lots of little cracks, lots of little. Whereas the crystallisation is underneath is splitting the skin of the paint,
Okay.
and lots of little cracks is very absorbent. But so the water can be absorbed in, but it can't evaporate out again, so it goes all the way in, or it just dampens the wall such that you get heat loss, and it's the heat loss then causes internal dampness through condensation.
Yeah.
What sort of so when did you first start seeing this issue?
I would say we saw it in the bedroom within a year of moving in. So 4 years ago.
Within I thought it was like the first week that I think we had we used the bath, so the bathroom doesn't have a window, which is another thing that we might want to ask you about. But when we opened the door, we sort of noticed some of the paintwork had sort of got
Yeah, but that was just from steam from the bath. We had an issue with the water, so we left the hot water running with the door open. So but that wasn't damp. I think that was more condensation from the bathroom.
Well,
that was just here.
condensation is the most common cause of damp.
But that was just like a really brief thing in that area.
And it's aesthetic rather than
But
anything.
I meant like the mould in the bedroom,
It was within a year.
which was not caused by us.
So what mould tells me, and we'll have a look at it now,
Mhm.
is that you've got excess internal vapour levels.
Mhm.
Mould only grows when relative humidity goes above 85% for long periods of time.
Mhm.
The primary cause of mould is insufficient ventilation.
Mhm.
The secondary cause is heat loss.
Mhm.
But it's the ventilation that will resolve most of the problems.
The mould isn't as bad as it was.
Yeah,
There's
so
a tiny bit now.
In the bedroom, we had a new roof put on the flat extension, which seemed to help. And we also
Is it warmer now?
no, it's not
really.
warmer.
Yeah.
But it had coping stones put on top. The roofer seems to think that the bricks have become quite porous,
Yeah.
so they had coping stones put on. So
To stop the water soaking into the bricks to make it sort of drip off the sides.
to make it drip away from the building. And we do something else.
So what are we? So we're looking at that wall, this wall, front wall, and this wall at the back. So 4 basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I like to pace myself. Let's get the data loggers because I can see those.
Sure.
Before knocking on the door, I had a look on the outside, and I could see crystallisation of the paintwork on the outside. And we just discussed that, but basically you've got this high risk of either water penetrating the whole way through, but normally you'd see a brown stain, which I'm not seeing, or it causes the wall to dampen in the middle of the wall, and a damp brick is a poor insulator, and you get heat loss, which increases the risk of condensation. It's primarily condensation is the issue. The second thing is that when you've got mould, you've got high relative humidity, surface relative humidity for long periods of time. You have a particular risk up to about this place because of where the front door is. So this is external, and because it's on the corner, you've got more heat loss because you've got increased surface area on the outside.
What would you recommend to avoid that heat loss?
Well, I'm going to show you a couple of things and then we can discuss it.
Great.
So it's difficult to see at this time of year because the outside is similar temperature to the inside, but you can more or less see where the cold is.
Yeah.
So blue is the coldest area, green is slightly warmer, and then you go orange and red, and then white is red hot, as it were.
Yeah.
But you'll find that is where it will line up with where the mould is, particularly in the corner. You can see how much colder it is in the corner because you got all that heat loss on the outside. It can be similar in the ceilings. You see how much colder it is in the ceiling. Now that's not because of heat loss to the outside. That's just because air can't flow. So heat moves through air currents, and it's just think that the air can't get into the corner quite as easily.
Yeah.
So it's not getting as much benefit from the radiator. And in fact, your radiator's on the other side of the room. This time of year, you find we do get a lot of condensation and mould at this time of year, and that's because during the day it's nice and warm and people have the windows open and so on, but at night it can get really cold. And I'll talk to that in a while, but I think you've got two things going on. On the outside, you've got the paint that's damaged here, and that's clearly something that needs to be done. But that's not the primary issue. I think the primary issue is excess vapour, and we'll look at that and we'll understand why. But you were asking me about the insulation. There are many ways of going about it. You've got to respect that these are Victorian properties that weren't built with insulation in mind. Everything was heated by an open fire, which causes air to move through. When you burn air, the heat draws the air through, so you get this constant movement of air, and as a consequence, you get much more natural ventilation. And as soon as you move to central heating, you reduce that ventilation. When you've got double glazing,
we did get trickle vents fitted.
Last year.
But they only got like a few small holes. They're not really full trickle vents. But I would say that trickle vents are useful, but they're not solving all the problems. Okay. We'll look at that in a moment. But so back to insulation. So you can retrofit insulation, and I'll show you different examples. I think a really good starting point is to know where your heat loss is, because then you can target where to put your insulation. And I might as well go through to all the different rooms. And so you got the dampness there. Why is it shaped like that?
No idea.
Is there boxing in there? I'm going to have a look at this wall. So you've got the heat loss from the wiring into the floor, and then you said you had mould in the back here, did you?
We did have some. It was particularly there was quite a bit sort of up here and up here. There's a tiny bit here. There's a tiny bit here.
I would say it was more down here.
Yep.
Like
So the reason you get that is so there's only a small gap between the inside and outside. I can't really illustrate it particularly well at this time of year, but if you think the building work between the inside and the outside is very small here, so you get what's called the reveals, and you get lots of heat loss in the reveals. I can show you something to do about that, but the primary solution is to deal with the ventilation in the first place, and we'll look at that as well. The other thing is that you've got the curtains. The heat isn't going to get into this area so well, but the curtains are going to trap it more so. Type of insulation, it's called Space Therm. It's by Procter. It's quite expensive, but then a majority of the cost in the insulation is the installation of it rather than the insulation material itself. Good thing about this is that it's very thin, so and it's also vapor permeable, so it allows the wall to breathe. And what can happen is when you insulate a wall is you cause the heat dynamics of the wall to change, and if water gets into the wall, it can form condensation and drip down onto timber joists below, which can cause rot, and that's a dangerous thing, really. But you can measure the humidity in the subfloor. You can keep a gap. You know, so there are things you can do. The other thing is you can use a simpler form of insulation, but it's not nearly as effective, called thermal lining paper. And that, you know, it's thin as well, and you know, it's another thing to consider.
I was going to say we painted on the outside storm dry.
Yeah.
Was that a year ago? Just over
I think I often recommend storm dry when people have brick, but it's not a cure all, but it does reduce the amount of water that's absorbed into brick.
I think what we have seen is that the bedroom has been better since we did the storm dry. That was particularly where we did it really. Yeah. And I do think that's made an impact.
We did it last summer and we haven't had anywhere near as much mould as we did.
So I'm hoping, we haven't had any this winter. So I think
that's interesting. Yeah.
Does this get fitted on top of the existing wall, or does it get fitted?
Yeah, no, it's on typically on top of the existing wall. I mean, you can go back, but it starts to cost more money.
And then is it plastered on top?
And there's plastered on top. Yeah. Okay. You use what's called blue grit either side, and that gives it adhesion. Mm-hmm. And then you put a finishing coat of plaster on top.
So how would that work with like a radiator? Would it fit?
Well, the radiator would have to be taken off in the first instance, plastered and put back on again. Yeah. But there's plenty of space. So the good thing about this one is reveals. Most insulation is really thick and it starts to look a bit ugly around reveals. And actually the reveals is where you want the most. So just something to think about. I would say that I've insulated my own property because it needed a lot of work to do to it. I would hesitate about insulating a property that's already finished, because you know it's both expensive, disruptive, destructive, and yours you can get back to its initial condition relatively easily, I think, without necessarily using insulation. Okay. And insulation is not, it's helpful, but it's not solving the root cause. Mm-hmm. And we'll look at that. Use this as an illustration, but when I put this, I can see the air is just flowing straight out, so it's doing nothing. It's since 2012, kitchens have needed to have extractor fans that are ducted all the way out. Yeah. But in this country, we don't test, which is why you have Grenfell fire and things like that. And kitchen companies will willingly put in kitchens without ducting because that's an extra faff and takes some time. Right. So there are 2 or 3 ways around it. You can either open this up and duct it, and that is definitely something to consider. And you'd have a hole coming out of... Oh yeah, it's a bit harder there. I suppose you could... Well, you could probably... Because you come straight out here and that doesn't really work. But you might be able to go out of there and then just have it hidden in within the ceiling. The joists should run like this, so you should be able to run it between joists.
Okay.
And
is there enough depth usually to do that?
Yeah, within the ceiling void, yes. Yeah. Okay. So the sort of the easier and more pragmatic solution is to cook with tops and pots and pans, monitor the internal humidity and use a dehumidifier. And I'm going to recommend you use a dehumidifier anyway. So I would say in the first instance, take that approach and then just see how it's going by monitoring the...
I mean, we already do that.
We have a dehumidifier, we keep it in the office generally.
Okay.
And we keep lids on pots and pans.
You definitely have an internal vapour issue. The reason why I was asking you whether you go away much is that when you do go away, you should leave a dehumidifier running. Yeah,
well, I we generally do that.
Dripping into the sink on the...
Well, like I said, we don't really go away for more than 3 days, probably, at a time.
We generally turn the dehumidifiers off in the summer and tend to keep windows more open. And then we generally use the dehumidifier.
But what's going to tell you the most is the data loggers. And let's have a look at those now. We're just talking about well, I was going to say pros and cons, but I can't really think of many pros for the PIV. But it went put me on to the next subject, and that is, I think, monitoring the internal vapor and then dealing with it is the best solution for mould and condensation. And data loggers is a really good way of doing that. And the reason why is that you can see the dew point on here, and that's showing it's 12 point, well, it's about 12.3 at the moment. There's 12.3 on my calculators, my system as well. And you will always want to keep that below the outside temperature, because if you go above that, you've got a high risk of condensation and mould, because the dew point is not only a measure of the amount of vapor in air, but it's also the temperature where condensation takes place at. And so you always want to keep it below that, and you do that by using targeted ventilation and dehumidification. But you've got to know what you're aiming for to know how to get rid of it, and that will solve a lot of your damp issues. Not necessarily all of them, but that's the starting point. And I'll have a look at your bathroom now. Unless you just had a shower, it feels like it's not doing anything. That's your problem. Zero. No, it's not great. It's it's acting as a dehumidifier, but you're seeing it on the
yeah, that's what we're there.
Yeah.
Permanently.
Yeah.
There, isn't it? That's what it looks like.
Oh yeah, that's revolting.
It's not going to go anywhere.
Great.
See what we can see. Oh, I can. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's very blocked up, but that wouldn't account for it. It hasn't got a backflow shutter, which is a good thing.
There's one on the outside wall, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. Do bits of different type of ducting. There's the metal ducting, and then there's a sort of plastic with metal, let's see if I can move that down. There you go. So I've now made it into a single metal that's going the whole way through.
Great.
And it's I'll have to line it up again, but yeah, so it will blow air out through the duct now. So you just asked me about the metal ducting, and I made it so that it goes all the way through now, instead of having the two sections of ducting. From 0 to 17 litres a second, and you're aiming for 15, so you're absolutely fine. So what you're talking about is known as adjacent ventilation. So you always want to be as close to the source of the vapour, target it as possible, and this is the best. You can, so this needs 30 litres a second according to building regs, and this needs 60 litres a second, but in my experience it needs even more than that, particularly as you're effectively open plan, because the door's missing there. And also it's a long way from the kitchen, from the source of vapour to the wall. And once it goes up over a certain speed, it starts to become really noisy. So that's running at 15 litres a second. And 60, you're talking about 4 times, potentially, probably wouldn't be 4 times the noise. But anyway, the point is that it's noisy, and that will discourage you from using it. I think if it were me in the first instance, what I would do is I would keep cooking with tops and pots and pans. You turn the temperature down so you're not generating as much vapour, but it's still 100 degrees centigrade, still cooking pasta and so on. And use monitors and use dehumidifier, and I'll look at those in a sec. In the first instance, and if you simply can't find you're able to control vapour, and you'll know that you're able to control vapour because you're keeping the dew point below the outside temperature. But if you're not able to do it, then go to the next solution. And if it were me, I'd probably bring it through. You'd have to go up through here, so you have to have ducting up through here, and then out. But it can be a relatively modest, and you wouldn't necessarily. So you could either just go across the top there, and that would work, and you can get,
so not in the wall or
not in the ceiling. You can have a rectangular version, and you barely notice it. or go into the ceiling void, which is obviously starts to become more expensive because you've got building works involved. But I think you could probably manage it without doing that.
Okay.
But monitor the vapour levels.
Would you still use the extractor fan as it is?
Or is it useless?
Well, manufacturers will argue that this takes smell out, but if you got if it's old, then it won't make much difference. But this type doesn't do anything because it's just mesh. But you get some that have carbon filters.
Yes, no.
But I don't think this does anything. I think it's just for looks, really. It shows that it's a 10 litre per day version. You really need to have 20 litres a day. For clothes drying, the speed at which water is evaporating off is way too fast for this type of dehumidifier. What do you use? Just a simple clothes rack, like over there? Yeah, that's fine. Do you keep the door closed or open?
Generally tries to close it.
Yeah.
Okay, then it contains it in this room, which obviously is
not good for this room.
not necessarily good for this room, but better for the rest of the flat.
Would a 20 litre...
I get a 20.
Single 20 litre for the whole flat, or would you get multiple ones for different rooms?
Good question. I think for the whole flat should be fine, but you've already got this 10 anyway, so you can use that.
We can put that under the table.
I think we've got another 10 in the studio as well. I think.
So we're looking on the outside, and it does look like a leak, but on the outside, it doesn't.
We have.
Oh, I wonder whether, because you get lots of rust on the outside. I'm going to see what I can see. But the neighbours are upstairs, aren't they? Could you maybe ask them to flush their loo or something?
Yeah.
Why I'm concerned that it might be a leak is that you've got brown staining, and that normally indicates water passing through building material. But it can also be caused by water coming into contact with metal, and then it's the rust that's coming through. And you've got the sockets there, and if condensation's forming on the sockets, it can rust, and that can come through.
That's what's happened. Yeah, the socket has been isolated because it was causing.
For this one here,
here
on the other, on the kitchen, or this one?
The kitchen.
But on this is the one that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
But I mean, you wouldn't necessarily be aware of it. But then that would be fairly extreme levels of condensation. I don't get but I mean, it could be historic but covered up by. Have you got? Did I say it's been damp proofed at the back, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's covered up by damp proofing in the past, but eventually it will come through, and I think that's what it is. So sockets cause heat loss. So he's
no luck, sadly.
He's not in.
No.
I don't know.
Well, I know it's not the best, most enjoyable thing to do, but if you just put your hand in behind here, if he's just flushing an empty loo, then it's just water, and I would just to be confident that it isn't water coming through, because you've got rust at the back of here, and this wrought iron down pipe, soil pipe has been replaced in the past. What happens is you can't paint very easily behind it. You can't get a brush, so people paint the front but they don't on the back, and it gets rusty at the back. And I have come across properties where they've got that sort of damp stain that comes from a leak. And what I'm thinking, I can't actually feel immediate. It does feel a tad damp there. But
so would it just be that base of the pipe that might be
Yeah.
leaking? Would it be the join, or
well, it'd be at the join, yeah.
it wouldn't?
It would probably be at the join, or on the rust. I mean, if it's not collapsed, so it's not coming through the rust, but I think it's just on the. It could be on the join.
The only other thing I noticed, it was raining quite heavily.
We were just looking at and if you send it over to me, that'd be great. But just to say that, it's not great water pouring down there, but I don't think it would account for the damp that we're seeing. And also, when you look at it, so the idea is that you have what's called a drip.
Bead.
Sorry?
A drip bead?
No,
No,
it's a drip bead. No,
that's the
it's a groove that runs
Yeah,
along here,
I thought that was called a drip bead.
and this does, yeah. So, I mean, it's not great, but I don't think it causes the damp that you're seeing.
Okay.
I do think it's internal, and I think it's made worse by damp proofing treatment there. And I think the brown staining is actually from rust. The fact that you're saying that the socket there was fusing increases my suspicion that it's internal, because that would be accounted for by condensation. We're looking on the outside, you know, it would be better to have a plinth all the way up, but I don't think it would account for the dampness. I would like just to double check that there isn't a leak from this, but my suspicions are it isn't. I will try and clean up the back there. The fact that your bathroom extractor fan wasn't working would go a long way to explain the dampness.
Okay.
To have a fillet of cement, which you have around there. So you'll expect to see the flaps about that sort of level when it's working well. So relative humidity, this 65%, is a measure of air's capacity to hold moisture. So when it gets to 100%, the air can't hold any more moisture and it comes out as condensation. The warmer it is, the more vapor you can hold. So in the summertime, when it's really hot, you get all the rivers and streams and ponds evaporating off, and you get possibly a big build-up of clouds in the afternoon. And then in the evening, when it gets cold, you get dew forming on the ground outside because it's reached the dew point. That's the temperature where you've got saturation. So the dew point is the temperature where vapor comes out of air. So it's both represents the point at which condensation starts, but it's also a measure of the amount of vapor in air. So when you're looking at relative humidity, it's relative to wherever the data log or hygrometer is. What you want to know is what the surface relative humidity is, i.e. what is the relative humidity on the surface, and you have to take into account the temperature difference between the hygrometer and the surface. For every 1 degree centigrade reduction in temperature, you have to increase the relative humidity by about 5%. So where it says 18 degrees centigrade, if that wall temperature was 11 degrees centigrade, that's 5 degrees centigrade lower, 7 degrees centigrade lower than that. 7 times 5 is 35. You would add 35 to 65 and you would hit 100%. So if there's a temperature difference of 7 between that and that, you'll get condensation forming on the wall. You'll get mould growing on the wall where the relative humidity goes above 85%, but for long periods of time. And in a room like this, you're going to have higher risks of mould because of that, because you're not coming in and out. You do you heat it at all, or what do you do?
We just have
oil heater.
Well, when you're here, but at night you just let it.
Yeah.
So you have to account for, and it's essentially it's a sealed unit. There's no ventilation or anything.
In winter it goes down to like 8 degrees.
8 degrees centigrade at night. But you see, the thing is that hygrometer, you're setting it to the hygrometer on the dehumidifier. Are you setting it to 70% or?
Can't remember.
I mean,
the one inside we set it to 50%.
Yeah.
This one, how does it? I don't remember how this one.
I would get another data logger. I would use it in this room and just see what's actually happening. I probably would run it most of the time.
This.
Yeah, it will cost you about £2 or £3, or it's a 10 litre, so probably £1 to £2 per day. It's probably suitable for this size environment. I would set it probably to 65% because the dehumidifier itself will generate some heat. So it may be giving you a false reading of what the relative humidity is because it's warmer than the cold wall.
Okay.
This
one gets particularly warm.
It gets really warm, but also smells. Is that normal?
Is it a desiccant type dehumidifier? Does it smell like chemicals?
No.
Yeah. It smells chemicals.
Yeah.
So you get a desiccant one, which is actually probably sensible for this environment. So when it gets below about 12 degrees centigrade, the standard dehumidifier is not very effective.
Okay, so yeah, the one inside is the one that turns off below a certain temperature.
When it gets too cold.
This one is the other type. So does that mean
so they'd be called desiccant. I know Miyako do it. They normally call it the Zambezi.
Yeah, I know that.
DDL might suggest desiccant. So you got the right time. But
because this one doesn't turn off when it gets cold.
But they also, so you've got a tube, or you've got a thing for a tube. So you could have it sitting and just dripping out.
Into a bowl or something.
I would do it into something.
Right.
You have to be careful. Better to go out. Have you got anywhere out?
No, still.
When Putin went to war, I stopped using central heating. I only used dehumidifiers, and I used to use both a desiccant and a standard. So this one is showing 8 litres a second. You need to have, it's better to have a higher one, but desiccants are less efficient, but they work much better below 12 degrees centigrade. And given that it is going to be a cold environment, it's probably worth doing that. But I'd probably run it more than you are at the moment and monitor. The other thing is that from an energy perspective, it's not going to cost you any more than using that. If I were you, I would use the desiccant dehumidifier as an auxiliary heating system. All the energy that is used in heating or in a dehumidifier comes out as heat, but you get a bonus of 50% with the dehumidifier. Because.
Sorry, did you want to check that pipe? It was just.
Yeah. I'd feel residual damp, but it is dry. You can see rust here, but that sort of looks historic.
Is there anything we could do to prevent?
I don't think the additional thing I'll say is that when you've got rainwater dribbling down, it will tend to dribble down the one side or the other, which could be on the back, but I don't think it would account for the amount of damp you've got on the inside. But condensation can look remarkably like a leak, and even though it looks like a leak, I think it's condensation is your issue. I think monitoring the internal vapor levels and adjusting accordingly will be your solution.
So bigger.
Yeah. This plug's shorting.
Well, so the plug will short because of condensation. That's the main reason why, and that's the vapor forming on the leads themselves. It will take some time for the wall to dry out, and
we've also put.
This is kitchen paint, which is that sort of plasticky.
Would that make the wall less breathable, and would that affect it as well?
To some extent, and you get the sort of calcium sulfate. So that's why it's blistering. It wouldn't blister. It might still blister a bit, but it wouldn't blister quite as much with standard emulsion paint.
Would you recommend taking it off?
I wouldn't go that far. I'd deal with the root cause. I'd start with the root cause. Ideally, paint should breathe, but probably 50% of kitchens don't have breathable paint.
I think we're planning to redecorate at some point. If we were to redecorate, would you strip it back?
Well, think about putting insulation on, because that will also help a lot.
So we're thinking of redecorating this room specifically.
Well, I might think about using thermal lining paper.
Okay.
So you want to dry it out. You wouldn't want to do it immediately. You want to let the wall dry out as much as possible, and it takes 6 to 9 months to dry a wall out. And going through winter, it's not going to be helpful. You'd sand away this. This is all superficial. It's calcium sulfate, and you probably wouldn't even need to plaster it. You could just use filler, easy fill.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would say actually, you're ready to let it dry out, sand it, and repaint it without any special treatment. When you've got tiles on the floor, they do act like a solid floor, and really, ideally, the plasters shouldn't touch. So you can get a bit of condensation forming on this because the floor gets quite cold because you've got external air flowing underneath the floor, so you can get condensation forming there. So you could think of taking the skirting board back and putting siloxane cream along, Damp Zone being an example. It's the same company that makes Dry Zone, but I don't think you need to in this case. I think you just as you can deal with it with the vapor monitoring and evaporation and using the extractor fan, well, the bathroom anyway. So I've been monitoring the subfloor humidity, and it's showing 75%, which all the properties I've been to have been around this figure today, which tells me that you haven't got high humidity in the subfloor void, which you would have to have if you had a leak going in underneath there, or rising damp for that matter. You don't have good ventilation in the subfloor, which is not ideal, but it's not the source of water. I think this is just caused by internal humidity. Okay. There are 3 reasons why I think that. One is that you've clearly got a source of vapor that's not being dealt with sufficiently, and the dehumidifiers aren't sufficient in themselves. You've got they're in many different zones in the property. So you got the classic places that you'll find condensation on the outside, and there's no clear source of water that could affect that, and the subfloor is a normal humidity levels. If you had a leak, then you'd have high subfloor humidity. The other thing is that well, it's not exactly on the outside, but you've got the socket here that's taking a section of wall out, and you've got wires going into the subfloor, and the heat will be drawn out through into the subfloor, causing heat loss around here from the metalwork of the electrical wiring. So you get heat loss there.
Is there any way to insulate that, like to insulate around the plug or around?
I mean, you can use plastic boxes, but actually dealing with the root cause, which is the vapor, is your primary solution. Okay. So what I'm going to show you a damp meter now, and recommend that you get one, and then you can monitor it over time. With the data loggers and the damp meter, you should be able to solve this, and you should be able to see improvement. That's the main thing. So talking about the crystallization underneath the pavement on the front wall, you need to take it as far back to brick as you can. I mean, the best walls are ones that are not painted. Yeah. But it's almost impossible to get rid of the paint, and anyway, you have to do it on a house-wide basis, and lots of issues there. But you can wire brush it back to brick as much as possible to try and get rid of all the calcium sulfate salts, all the crystals. You can use wire brush or chemicals or sandblasting it, but I'd say in this instance wire brush or even coarse grain sandpaper will go a long way too. By hand, or well, why not?
The whole wall?
That's what the hands were made for.
Would you then...
The base of the wall.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the whole ground.
Could it then be repainted?
And then repaint it. And so the rule of thumb is go for the same paint that you had originally, so there's some consistency. But if you don't know what it is, then you have to go for more impermeable. That means blocking the water. And if you don't know at all, then you have to go for fully impermeable. And the ones that do that are Zinsser and Dulux, do an exterior masonry impermeable paint. But do look on the thing. If it says semi-permeable, it won't work, because it will just cover the problems, but it will allow water in but not evaporate out.
So we painted the front on top of what there was already paint there.
Yeah.
We painted the front. I'm pretty sure it was Dulux. Out.
But was it impermeable?
I don't. We've got it on the side. We can show that, but we don't know what was underneath it anyway. So I don't know what the paint was that we painted over.
The point being that if you paint on, just say that this is impermeable, and if you paint on that with a semi-permeable, you can just hide all the gaps that are in the original paint. It looks great, but water is getting in, absorbed, and is getting blocked by the impermeable. So
you'd recommend completely impermeable paint? Yeah.
Ideally, you don't have any paint at all, or you have.
So then it's breathable.
So ideally it's as breathable as it can be. But if you don't know what the current paint is and you can't get rid of it, then you have to go for impermeable. And then it just means you have to check it every year or so, just to make sure that you don't have it coming back again. But I don't think it's coming all the way through on the front. I think it's just dampening the outside brick, which is causing heat loss.
Do you think it's worth sandblasting it? I know that's quite expensive.
I wouldn't. I would use the wire brush and or coarse grained sandpaper.
But just for small parts of it, rather
just
than...
where it's showing as damage.
Because the other option would be to have all of the paint removed.
It starts to get quite expensive.
Yeah.
Open up. Or is that
It'll look at
useful?
No, I think it's fine. I don't mind.
They look like they're originally some sort of vent.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's not really.
Well, there's something called passive vent. I'm not a big fan of it. You don't have them in your house, but basically, you only benefit from passive vent when you've got good flow of air on the outside. Otherwise, they cause heat loss without any real gain. So a very very simple thing to get is that dew point is a measure of the amount of vapour in air. It's also the temperature where condensation takes place at. When it's raining outside, the dew point is the same temperature as the outside temperature, because rain is condensation. So effectively it is condensing when it's raining. You've got 100% relative humidity, and the dew point is whatever it is outside. So when it's raining, you actually need a lot more ventilation internally than you would if it's dry, because every time you blow air out of the property, it's being replaced by air that's coming from the outside, and the air from the outside will have the same dew point as the outside temperature. So that's number one to understand. Second is that when the internal air will have the internal dew point, the external air will have the external dew point. So when you're blowing air out, you're going to replace the internal air with the external air, and you can drop the dew point by increasing the ventilation. By opening the window, will drop the dew point, and it will drop down to the outside temperature or below it. Okay. So, but then opening all the windows up in winter is very cold, and a dehumidifier is an alternative way of doing it. It's not instead of ventilation, but it's an alternative to ventilation. And it's particularly effective when you're not in a place like the studio or not in here, because you can just run it in the background. But the point of what I was trying to say is that you can always increase the ventilation with windows or fans or whatever, and replace the internal vapour. The other thing to do is to reduce the production of vapour, and that is by cooking with tops on pots and pans, drying clothes outside whenever you can do, and closing the bathroom door, and showering for less time, but We all love long showers, long humid showers, but they do produce a lot of vapour.
If we got a bigger dehumidifier, where would you recommend putting it in the flat?
So the dehumidifier, you either put it in the place where you're getting the vapour, and that you can see on the data log because the dew point will be higher, or the place where you're getting the damp. In this place, you're getting damp everywhere, so I would probably in the first instance put it in the kitchen, but the data loggers will help you find the right place.
Okay, the right place. Okay. Great.
I'll add other things when I do the final thing, but
yeah. Okay. Great.
It's doable.
Okay.
So you want to find the top of the area that shows 100%, and you're going to put it onto that masonry. Find 100% there and mark it, and then maybe once a week or once a month go back and just see whether it's that height is dropping. You'll find that it fluctuates. It's not a straight thing, but it's the trend that you're after. And also winter is a harder time. You're going to get more condensation in winter, obviously.
To get it to drop lower.
Yes. Well, that not only is it the aim, but it gives you confidence that you're doing the right thing.
In the height, are we talking, or the percentage?
Well, both, but it's like jeans drying in the wind. You know, they're going to dry from the top downwards.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, okay.
Because gravity is drawing water down.
Okay.
A damp wall is a poor insulator, so you're always going to get more condensation forming at the base of the wall.
Okay.
That's why people think it's rising damp.
Can I take a picture of that?
Yeah, well, I put it on film anyway, but you can do it. It's Dr. Meter 2-in-1. I mean, they do other things, but
Is there a list?
it's on Amazon. I know not everyone believes in Amazon, but you'll find it elsewhere. So you're asking me about lime and concrete. So concrete is impermeable, lime is permeable. Lime has its place, and most of the walls would have been lime render, horsehair and lime. But cement is used primarily nowadays, and concrete is pretty impermeable. And at the base of the wall, you'd want a concrete plinth rather than a lime one. But I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other, because lime does evaporate out.
I think we were recommended lime because of the way it moves.
It's more flexible.
It's more flexible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.